of the art of self-alignment. And my name is Brandon, and I'm here to talk to you today about why babies are the best model for anybody trying to increase their strength, power, or just general fitness. So here's what babies have that most people don't. They have the ability to stop when they feel like it. So what I mean by that specifically, so when a baby is going through their developmental stages where I believe they start on their back, and then they start, swishing side to side, and they start moving their legs. So they're building basic primitive patterns that we actually in the fitness industry have discovered are very, very powerful in terms of rebuilding someone's strength, someone's power, someone's endurance, just understanding the efficiency of their movement. So say for instance like crawling, right? You move, we have something where our hands and legs move in opposition. That's called a contralateral pattern. That just means crawling. But babies are programmed to do this. And what they do what the majority of young men are trying to do. They get strong and they bulk. They have some milk, they train, and they sleep whenever the hell they want. So, what can we learn from these? What can we learn from babies? We can learn to take our time. Try not to rush things. Do things with quality and rest as long as you need to. The whole obsession with resting is it 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? On a grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter that much. I think it matters to someone who is a very type A personality who wants to get the maximum done in 1 hour. But in the grand scheme of babies, they take their time, they rush sometimes, they do whatever they want until they just give up. And they just sit there, and then they'll wait for someone to take over for them. So, train like a baby. What they do, they have a squatting pattern. Right, I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm going to flip the camera here. They'll squat. They'll bend at the hips. They'll try to reach for something and pull themselves up. They'll try to do stuff with their upper body. I mean, they will just do what they need to do. And the one thing that they just know, they know when to stop. When they're tired, they'll go to sleep. And most people, their rational brain just has some kind of programming, their self-image says, no, we have to do as much as we can, we have to do it in this time, and it needs to be this way, it needs to be perfect, it needs to be this and that. It's like, no, you just need to move around, and your body will get better if you are consistently and sensibly challenging yourself. This is why I believe that the whole the whole issue people have with CrossFit is, and it's the causing of the injuries, CrossFit itself doesn't cause injury. CrossFit itself just makes people more interested in exercise that they've been always wanting to do. But the type A personality based in what I consider a young ego that doesn't actually understand what it takes to do a squat or a deadlift or a press or some kind of dynamic movement very properly, they think that they can just, it has no limitations. That's a sign of someone who's young developmentally in the mind, is that they don't understand how much time and the actual limitations of the human body at this moment. If they haven't been working on this for, since like age 8 or 10, since most Olympians have been, what makes you think that you're going to be able to just do that? It's not your actual rational brain that's telling you that. It's something deeper that's ruling this decision-making process that says, we can do this, and we don't even need to train. We can just do this. So, and that's literally the voice that my ego has when it comes to training. Sometimes it'll just flare up and say, it doesn't matter how much you slept or eat. It doesn't matter. Just do it. But that's not sensible, because in the long run, that's not going to help my goals. That's not going to help me feel better about it. That just can lead to a lot of catastrophic failure. And in fact, that is probably the main issue, is if you just took the time element out of CrossFit, you'd have a great model for fitness, because it introduces people to weightlifting, gymnastics, track and field, strongman training, I mean, endurance, swimming, it just gets people moving. It is a phenomenal concept. And in fact, it went viral because people have been looking for something like this. However, it's in its infancy. You have to give it some time to develop its own identity. It's even young in its own ideology. And it's not based in, traditional exercise science. There's a lot of things that fly in the face of common sense, but, they're figuring it out. And if the time element, if at least in the beginning was not focused on for even the beginners or intermediates, I think a lot of CrossFit, if it would be phenomenal for people. But in terms of injury, that just means too soon and too much. And that's ego-driven. And for some reason, it just attracts that. And it just goes to show, it's symptomatic more of our culture that egos are underdeveloped. Like, people have these, imagine your ego is a box, and it contains all of these ideas of things that should and should not happen, and they're based sometimes from when we're really young, and we just kind of keep those ideas in that box, and we operate off those principles until we take in information. The main tenet of the ego is it likes to take in information that fits its model. It likes to systematically ignore things that don't matter to it. So, I'm sure we all have examples of people in our lives that just take in the facts and they hear it and they just don't do anything about it. I mean, for instance, I was a smoker for many, many years, from my teenage years, developmental years, into my early 20s, maybe even mid-20s. I knew the consequences. I was even asthmatic. How stupid of me was that? But, in the end, it's because I was operating under the principle that I was invincible, that my body was just so young, it would heal from anything. I used to have a peanut allergy, and I made a very, very stupid decision to try to get rid of that allergy by eating Snickers. I said, fuck it, I'm not gonna deal with this the way that I have an EpiPen and like adrenaline pen in case I die. Forget it, I'm just gonna do it. And lo and behold, I can eat peanuts now, no problem. But that's another story. That's just an example of sheer luck. So back to the story about how the ego says things should and should not be. And that's just symptomatic, and people who have been driven by the ego sometimes they're attracted to CrossFit because that's just another outlet for them to display their invincibility. But at the same time, CrossFit started my fitness journey, and it introduced me to the greatest sport I've ever known, Olympic weightlifting. It's the most transformative process I've ever been through. It makes me change my mind, my body, my emotions, and it makes them self-aligned. Yeah, that's where you get the name, right? Self-alignment. So, but CrossFit is like, it's a great analogy someone said, it's like the little leagues of fitness. You pick what you want. Like, you play different sports and you play different activities, you find one that just fits you. You may be attracted to the endurance element or the strength and the power element, or maybe both. Like, it's just a great opening for people, and we can build off of that, is what I'm saying. And I try not to have too hard or too soft of an opinion on CrossFit because it's, at least people are interested and they're getting into it, and hopefully it will grow and coaches can collaborate, and I plan to work with a lot of other coaches in the future. And in fact, I'm going to give a couple of shout outs to people who are making amazing things happen on YouTube. Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. His videos are fantastic. They're no BS. He says no gimmicks, pure strength. This kid's young. Why shouldn't he say he's a kid? He's a young man, and he knows how to just break it down. He knows how to see right through that stuff. And for the more like intermediate and older trainees in their 30s, I think you should listen to Elliot Hulse. His strength camp videos and this philosophy are magnificent. He has great insights that can just help you understand why you're training, how to affect that emotional and mental aspect to improve your training. And, of course, you can't forget, if you guys have ever heard of Frank Yang, the mind fucker. He is phenomenal. Like, I relate more to Frank than anything, because he was, he was a young, kind of like really smart, intelligent, artsy kind of guy, and he was just, he just wanted physicality. He wanted that power to assert himself. And, in that journey of bulking and cutting and getting strong and powerful, he found all of these things. And, there are tons of naysayers. I mean, we were just like, this guy is weird, but he gets it done. And he has cool videos that just make my mind think other places. So those are 3 places that I think people should go checking out, like Johnny Candido, Elliot Hulse, and Frank Yang, and Omar Isuf. Chef Buff. He has a great way of explaining. He's very animated, but he gives you the good stuff, and he answers your questions. He goes onto Facebook, and he actually reads all these questions, and he gives some pretty good witty remarks sometimes to the stupid questions. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are no real stupid questions. They're just misguided questions. But, back to the CrossFit question. If people can get themselves a hold of information that has nothing to do with their sphere of their ego, they'll learn so much more. Be penetrated by ideas. That's Frank Yang's thing, is he wants people to be penetrated by ideas, things that you cannot help but be moved by. And part of the reason I started my YouTube channel is because I saw these guys putting out information that was turned into knowledge for them. It became something personal. Like they were the underdogs. They just, maybe not Elliot, maybe he was just strong, but he's been barbell training since he was like 14. But I was not fit. I hated physical activity. I was all in my brain. I was just physically uncoordinated and small and tiny. I was like 135 pounds until I graduated college when I was like 23. I was a heavy smoker. Of course, I would just over-rationalize everything. I just deadened my body. And one day I knew I had to do something about it. And I saw the movie 300, and I saw these guys. They were ripped. And people would say, yeah, it's CG, it's steroids, whatever. But these guys were fit. And I found out that they actually did a version of an early adoption of CrossFit called, it was by Jim Jones, Mark Twight. He and Greg Glassman, if you know anything about the history of that, Greg Glassman actually took all those ideas and made CrossFit. So I hear, but that's just how the whole thing exploded. I found out about CrossFit, started watching YouTube videos and looking at the website, and then eventually I found a coach. By sheer luck, I found a CrossFit gym near me, and I got started. I was terrified of learning all this stuff because I had no idea how to rationalize what my body was going through. But I loved it. I just instinctually knew I was gaining freedom. So, as it happened, I got an internship with my coach Saul Jimenez. Mad Dog School of Fitness, shout out. That's hands down one of the best CrossFit affiliates on the Bay Area Peninsula. But he's de-affiliating soon because he doesn't want to be part of that drama in CrossFit anymore. Long story short, he was my warm introduction into the sport of Olympic weightlifting. I've hosted a clinic with Jim Schmitz. I've worked out at Catalyst Athletics. Rob Earwicker is my current coach. I haven't seen him in a while, but shout out to Rob. And it just brought me on this journey that I just needed to share with people and give them some of the right steps. And one thing that the ego doesn't know how to do is take the right steps. It can happen. The right progression. You find a coach, break your ego. Don't let it rule you anymore. Don't let that box of should and shoulds tell you what to do anymore. Ground your feet, feel what to do, find a coach. Have a good day.